Two new bus services were launched in Israel on March 4th, separate bus services for Palestinians and for Jewish colonists in the West Bank. Between late February and the end of March, Palestinian solidarity groups in campuses around the world commemorate the Israel Apartheid Week, a week of events to raise awareness to the discrimination and oppression of Palestinians by Israel and to demand equal rights. In South Africa especially, it was noteworthy that the African National Congress Youth Movement and the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, both endorsed the event and joined the protest against apartheid in Israel-Palestine. Israeli officials deny the existence of apartheid, but surely an accusation by South Africans who have had first-hand experience with racial segregation cannot be easily dismissed. And indeed, as if on cue, the Israeli Ministry of Transportation launched a new policy, just as protesters around the world called to end apartheid in the area, separate bus lines for Jews and for Palestinians. Over the past 20 years, the Israeli authorities developed a complex array of mechanisms to separate between the Palestinian population of the West Bank and the illegal Israeli colonies. The Israeli colonists, nearly all of them Jewish, command approximately 70% of the West Bank, although they are less than a fifth of the West Bank's population. Such mechanisms include checkpoints, special roads for the colonists on which Palestinians are not allowed to travel, the wall of separation, and numerous fences and obstacles. In November 2011, Palestinians launched the Freedom Riders Initiative in protest of the separation. Palestinians insisted on riding in buses in the West Bank. There is no official legal restriction preventing Palestinians from using the public transportation services, but in practice, bus drivers tend to drive past the bus stations if they see that Palestinians are standing there waiting for the bus. Because Palestinians are not allowed to approach the colonies, they have to make the trek on foot to a few stations placed outside the colonies. The colonists usually use the bus stations inside the colonies, and so the bus drivers can drive past Palestinians if they wish. But over 30,000 Palestinian workers who are employed inside Israel have no choice but to keep trying. They take the hours-long journey into Israel and back every day in order to make a living, because the job market in the West Bank is plagued by high unemployment. In the past decade, there was no case in which Palestinian passengers attacked the colonist passengers. And yet colonists continue to send complaints that they have to share the bus with Palestinian passengers. These complaints increased after the Freedom Riders Initiative. One colonist wrote that on the buses there are more terrorists than Jewish residents, and they all attack the poor driver. Another wrote, "I can't go visit my parents in Ariel because I'm afraid." "The buses are full of Arabs," added a third. "There are many monkeys in the bus," wrote a fourth. Israel Katz, Israel's Minister of Transportation, responded to these racist remarks by launching new bus lines for Palestinians only. At the same time, soldiers were instructed to take every Palestinian they find on a normal bus off the bus and put them on the separate Palestinian-only buses. An added benefit of the separation for the Israeli occupation policies is that the Palestinian-only buses can be stopped at checkpoints, and all the passengers can be required to undergo prolonged and humiliating security checks. All this without delaying the regular buses, which can drive past without delay, carrying the privileged colonists to their destination. Unlike the apartheid regime in South Africa, Israeli apartheid policies are more concealed. No law exists which prevents Palestinians from taking buses inside the West Bank, but the soldiers have clear instructions not to allow them. An Israeli couple challenged the ethnic separation by getting on the Palestinian-only bus inside Israel. The driver tried to prevent them from getting on the bus, but admitted that he had no authority to prevent them from taking the bus. However, he told the couple that after picking up Palestinian passengers, he is not allowed to make any stops until he reaches the occupied Palestinian territory. A few critical comments made in the world media about the apartheid buses have been covered by the Israeli press, which raised some concern that such overt discriminatory policies can hurt Israel's image in the world. The apartheid bus lines are operated by the Afikim company, which is a privately owned company operating in the occupied West Bank and serving the colonies. 2 of the buses belonging to the company were set on fire on March 5th, as they were parked during the night. possibly a retaliation for the humiliating segregated bus lines. This is Sheerhever for The Real News. After President Obama's visit to Israel and the Occupied Palestinian Territory, Secretary of State John Kerry began a series of visits and talks with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. Kerry returned in an effort to speak with both sides and restart the negotiations. The negotiations have been stuck since September 2010. While the Israeli government claims to be eager to continue the negotiations and blames the Palestinian side for refusing to talk, it continues to expand the illegal colonies in the West Bank and to place severe restrictions on Palestinians in the occupied territory. Netanyahu has also added an additional demand that the Palestinians recognize Israel as a Jewish state. As Israel didn't need the recognition of other countries in order to define itself according to its own laws, Netanyahu's demand is perceived as a tactic to further delay negotiations. The State of Palestine, formerly known as the Palestinian Authority, has placed a single condition to resume talks: that Israel will freeze the construction in the illegal colonies. President Mahmoud Abbas has also demanded the release of Palestinian political prisoners held in Israeli jails. But the Palestinian public is wary of broken promises. Even if Israel meets these conditions, what is to guarantee that it will not be yet another delaying tactic? Negotiations have begun in 1992, and the end of the Israeli occupation is still nowhere in sight. Obama gave a rousing speech in Jerusalem, calling on Israelis to respect Palestinian rights. He did not give a similar speech directed at Palestinians.
I believe that peace is the only path to true security. You have the opportunity to be the generation that permanently secures the Zionist dream, or you can face a growing challenge to its future. Given the demographics west of the Jordan River, the only way for Israel to endure and thrive as a Jewish and democratic state is through the realization of an independent and viable Palestine. That is true.
But despite the powerful speech, why would another initiative to resume negotiations now succeed when countless such initiatives failed in the past? Secretary of State John Kerry seemed certain that this time it would work. The U.S. approved the resumption of aid to the Palestinians, enabling the State of Palestine to pass its budget for 2013 at the very last moment. Kerry's multiple visits and meetings also sent the message that efforts to reach a compromise are at full force. Perhaps the U.S. is concerned that the legitimacy of the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah is declining the longer they are unable to make any achievements in ending the occupation. Perhaps the growing involvement of Qatar in the region and the cordial relations forming between the Qatari government and the Hamas party, which currently controls Gaza, is a threat to U.S. monopoly and its influence over the region. The current strategy of President Abbas and the Fatah party is to appeal to international organizations, the UN, the International Court of Justice, etc., in order to accumulate international legitimacy and expose the illegality of Israel's policies. The Israeli government is very concerned about these moves, because in addition to condemnations by the UN, it could lead to the arrest of Israeli soldiers and former soldiers on suspicions of war crimes when they travel outside of Israel. But President Abbas agreed to postpone the next move in appealing to the International Court of Justice, to give the US-brokered peace initiative a chance. Perhaps he was also concerned that making such a move while Kerry is visiting will reflect badly on the Palestinians' willingness to negotiate in good faith. Kerry therefore achieved a small victory for Israel, a further delay in making Israel accountable for its actions in the occupied territory. Kerry has reportedly offered economic benefits to the State of Palestine in exchange for restarting the negotiations. For example, he suggested that a few economic projects for Palestinians could be permitted in Area C of the West Bank, which comprises about 66% of the West Bank, something which Israel currently forbids. Kerry then proceeded to mention the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002. The initiative, nicknamed the Saudi Initiative, was accepted unanimously by the Arab League in 2002 and has been ratified every year ever since. The initiative offers Israel a package deal. Israel will return to the internationally recognized 67 borders, will reach an agreement with the Palestinians for the resolution of the right of return of Palestinian refugees from 1948, and in exchange, all Arab countries will sign peace treaties with Israel. The initiative is in many ways the embodiment of the most sought-after goal of the Zionist movement. Israel will become secure, recognized, and peaceful. But as Israel's borders have expanded in military occupation, so have its ambitions. The Israeli government refuses to discuss the Arab Peace Initiative. Kerry suggested that the Palestinians change the initiative so it will suit Israel, perhaps by allowing Israel to retain some of the territory it occupied in 1967, or by denying the rights of Palestinian refugees. The fact that Kerry also made efforts to bridge the gaps between Israel and Turkey further demonstrate the point that Kerry's visit to the region has coincided with Israeli interests, not with Palestinian interests.
We would like to see this relationship that is important to stability in the Middle East, critical to the peace process itself. We would like to see this relationship get back on track in its full measure.
But when Kerry spoke with Israeli officials, they refused to start the negotiations on the issues of borders and security. They demanded that the right of return of Palestinian refugees and the definition of Israel as a Jewish state would be part of the negotiations from the start. Knowing that the Palestinian leadership will never accept Israel's demands, they will thus be able to claim that it was the Palestinians who have caused the negotiations to fail. Rebuffed by the Israeli side, Kerry said that he has homework to do and left. An Israeli official hinted that Kerry's hubris has led him to believe that he could succeed where so many have failed. But Kerry's failure stems from a deeper reason. As long as the power relations between Israel and the Palestinians remain drastically unequal, there is no incentive for the Israeli government to abide by international law and to respect agreements which it had signed. The massive military aid which the US gives to Israel to the tune of $3 billion annually, and over 6 times the aid to Palestinians, contributes to the unequal power relations. Kerry did not hint that Israel's insistence to continue the occupation could lead to a reduction in US support.
They have come every month now since last summer. As part of the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions Movement, or BDS, activists with Jewish Voices for Peace have been standing outside shopping malls in Washington, D.C. to protest the selling of illegal Israeli products, this one being SodaStream.
SodaStream is an Israeli company that operates their factory not in Israel proper but in the Occupied Palestinian Territories. It's made in Ma'ale Adumim, which is an illegal Israeli settlement, and it came about through the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and those neighborhoods. So we don't want to have products being sold that are profiting off of the expropriation of Palestinian land and resources. Ultimately, that's why we're here.
The BDS movement has been gaining momentum in the United States with increasing protests, lectures, and activities, following Europe's lead, where the BDS movement has soared in popularity over the past decade. These actions follow the BDS movement against apartheid decades ago in South Africa, where the government carried out racist and illegal practices. Opponents of BDS argue that modern-day Israel is not like apartheid South Africa and should not be boycotted. But a senior Jewish activist in the U.S. Capitol disagrees.
There's quite a few analogies with what is going on in Israel and Palestine, the occupied territories of Palestine, and what happened in South Africa. The fact is that it is segregated. That's what apartheid means. The fact that, in fact, it's also a case where, unlike South Africa, even the roads are segregated. That didn't happen in South Africa. So in some ways, it's worse.
As far as student organizations and universities, many SJP chapters across the country have taken up BDS as far as working on boycott campaigns, trying to get the university to divest from companies that profit from Israel's violation of international law. And in fact, if you look at the SJP chapters in the UC's, University of California, several have been successful in passing divestment resolutions. So I definitely think this is a growing movement.
In addition to protesting locally, several groups write letters and sign petitions to headquarters of large companies to stop the sale of illegal Israeli products like SodaStream in all their stores. BDS actions continue to take place in shopping centers, places of worship, and college campuses around the country. Marjan, Press TV, Washington.